Welcome, everyone. I'll let a bunch of you keep rolling in, and you'll notice the chat is already here and active. And very first thing I'll ask you all to do is to switch your chat. You'll see the little 2 and switch it to panelists and attendees. And that way you all get to communicate with each other throughout our time together, and anything you type in there will not just be seen by Sheila and I, but will be seen by all of you here. Oh, that beautiful song. That's one of my favorite artists, Gregory Alan Isakov, and that one was called The Universe. Thanks for asking, Kelly. So Sheila, I'll invite you to join us as we come on here. And before we just jump in, yay, hi.
How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. I'm excited and nervous, but really good. Like it's a good nervousness.
Oh, we have the most supportive community, right?
I know.
Zero nerves, but that's good, right? We get to channel that all.
Yeah.
Cool. So yeah, Sheila requested that we always like to know where everyone's tuning in from. But as you're all saying hi and welcome, maybe drop in a word. It can be really simple if you're feeling vulnerable of how you're feeling right now. Just like a really quick, don't think too hard about it. Just kind of like first thing. And mellow. We have mellow and energetic. I love that. Free and full of energy. We have joyful, relaxed, sad. Yeah, I feel that. Ready, hopeful, peaceful.
So good.
So good. Before we jump in, we have the most amazing event in store for all of you. I'm so excited that Sheila's with us, and we've been talking, and I've learned so much just in planning this about what SketchPoetic means, and this new form of expression and a way to support our mental health. And I'll let Sheila, go deeper into it, but really just wanted to welcome you all. We're so happy to have you here today. This is the Elevate Everyday series, right? So it's a free monthly live platform that's devoted to sharing unique, quirky, unconventional ideas that work. Hence SketchPoetic. We bring experts across the wellness field to share their experience from meditation and sustainability, holistic chefs, authors, and of course, a new event like Sketching Today. And these are always recorded. I'll just let you all know that now. So they're recorded. We'll be uploading them to YouTube after the event. So hopefully you have a pen and paper today rather than to take notes. We're actually going to get into sketching together, but you can always sign up for these. You'll get a link to the recording and you can watch again after. And as a thank you for being here, we like to create a little discount code for you all. I'll mention this at the end as well, but it's 10% off your next Four Sigmatic order. And the discount code for today is SketchPoetic. So all one word, SketchPoetic. And our team Four Sigmatic can throw that in the chat for you as well. And I want to mention that a lot of you are also our everyday magicians or our members, and the discount also applies to you. So if you're a member, right, you're a part of our subscription program, you already get 20% off. You get another additional 10% off with Sheila's code. Quick disclaimer, this might not be as relevant for today's session, but Sheila or I are not your healthcare practitioners. And really what I mean by that is if you have specific questions, we welcome questions about something that comes up really personal. Maybe ask it in a more general way so we're able to support you, and maybe it can benefit others that are here as well. Chat box, you're already amazing, and so many of you are chatting right now. I'll mention one more time, if you came in a little late, if you want everyone to be able to see your chats, just switch the little 2 to panelists and attendees. I still see a bunch of you are just chatting with Sheila and I, which is awesome. But if you want to chat with each other, yeah, the code is SketchPoetic. Change that to all panelists and attendees. And then logistics to have out and ready, it's just a pen, very specific, and some paper, right, Sheila?
Mm-hmm. We're going to do a 10-minute prompt together.
Yep. So before I let Sheila take it away, for those of you that are new to meeting Sheila, I want to give you a beautiful formal introduction. So what started as a personal commitment to Sheila's daily sketch became a catalyst for her own transformation. It led to greater purpose of elevating art as a tool for self-reflection, of self-care, and of healing. And through art, Sheila was able to sketch and paint her way through complex emotions and process both her conscious and unconscious thoughts. We're going to learn about that later. It's so cool.
Yeah, we are.
The benefits of this practice became evident in her mental and emotional well-being. It also became a therapeutic tool in helping process anxiety and trauma. It has become her mission to share this practice with the world and to help others find their own way. Sheila has over 20 years as a facilitator, coach, and consultant in the technology and digital agency space. Her work with Fortune 500 companies informs her understanding of what drives transformative growth in individuals and in teams. She earned a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree with a minor in art history from the University of Memphis and a certification in social emotional arts from UCLA. This certificate empowers educators, community arts professionals, mental health practitioners, and anyone interested in maximizing social emotional benefits of arts experiences and minimizing self-judgment and anxiety that can impede learning and growth. Lots of talking.
On that note, I'm out of here.
Welcome.
I'm done. I'm done. I don't need to say anything else.
No, we're so happy to have you.
Thank you, Danielle. I'm really, really excited. The nerves are gone. I'm just ecstatic at this point.
Right on. Yeah, we're so happy to have you here. So before we jump into the practice, I think it's really important to just learn your story, right? How did SketchPoetic come to be? Just that like why behind what we're doing beyond that brief little intro.
Yeah, I think that is probably the most critical part of understanding the power of SketchPoetic. So it was about 4.5 years ago. It was around the late 2016, and I was at the height of my career. And when I say height, I'd always envisioned myself as leading a team, a company, and I was working at an innovation agency, and I was basically doing what I'd always thought I was going to do. But at the time, I was burnt out, and I thought I was burnt out because I was an entrepreneur. I had a lot of frenetic energy. I couldn't keep I wasn't mindful. I definitely was 24/7 work, work, work. And I'm a mom and, I love my family, but I felt like I wasn't present. And coinciding with that, for those of you that are entrepreneurs, you'll know this, but there's this point when you're building a company that you hit a wall. And the wall comes from scaling the business to the point where it goes beyond your skill set or your expertise. And I was also hitting that wall. So between my professional wall and my personal wall, everything came to a head. And part of the reason it showed up is in order for me to grow the business, I had to travel. And I had this debilitating fear of turbulence flying. It started off just a little bit, but it got to a point where I would have to basically get drunk to get on the plane. And then I would seriously, it's really embarrassing, but shameful story, part of my story, but I'd carry these little alcohol bottles and basically drink my way through that flight. And so I numbed everything I was feeling. And I knew it wasn't healthy, and I kept on suppressing it and pushing it down. And I finally realized I need to go see someone. And I don't know about people that are listening or being part of this conversation, but I had a major stigma around mental health. Being of Asian upbringing, we didn't talk about our emotions. We certainly didn't talk about mental health in terms of therapy. That was for other people. We didn't have our issues. And so I had that stigma. And so when I overcame that stigma, I really didn't even know the language of emotions. And that's one of the things that really changed my life, Danielle, is that I didn't have a vocabulary around emotions. I knew the basics like sad, happy, angry. And so when somebody told me, my coworker said, Sheila, you're anxious. And I said, what the hell is anxious? What does that mean? I had to Google anxiety. And I know it's really sad, but the dictionary definition of anxiety is the fear of the unknown. So I'm like, oh yeah, of course. I have a lot of fears of the unknown, and I'm sure everyone has anxiety.
Yeah.
And so I did finally see a therapist, and she described, her name's Linda Mallerstein, incredible therapist, highly recommend her. But she described what I was going through in a way that nobody had ever explained anxiety to me. And this is what unlocked me. She basically described anxiety in a physical way. She said, anxiety is energy in your body you're not releasing. And she said that energy is caused by emotions you're not expressing. I'm like, oh, that makes sense.
Yep.
And she asked me, she's like, do you know what those emotions are? And I said, I don't. I said, I have some thoughts, some assumptions, And then the last question she asked me, and then I'll pause there, is she said, "Do you have a healthy way to express those emotions?"
Hmm.
And she said, "Something that you love." And as soon as she said that, Danielle, I immediately remembered as a kid, I would paint and draw my way through really bad, turbulent times. I experienced a ton of trauma as a child from the age of basically 4 to 15. And so I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to sketch daily. And that's how it all started. It was just this one conversation, everything coming to a head, and then just really understanding what that meant.
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing. When was that? How long have you been sketching daily?
Well, I started sketching daily, the commitment after I quit that job. So basically that was a 6 month process of recognizing the issue, realizing that the job that I had and the work I was doing wasn't creating a really good foundation for me to actually go inward. So I
Yep.
made a conscious effort to ramp down and basically find a job that had a better work life balance. So it was a conscious choice. And then I started sketching daily April 19th, 2017. I just celebrated my anniversary and I
That's
have
right.
been creating daily every day since.
We were so excited about that. We're like the 4-year anniversary and it's a four sigmatic
Or
partnership
Sigmatic.
and like it's happening. That's
Yeah.
incredible. Yeah. So amazing. And I know there's certain pieces of like what makes we've we were like, this is not doodling. This is a different type of art. I'd love
Yes.
to kind of set the framework of like
Yeah.
what makes sketch poetic sketch poetic.
I'm so glad you asked, and I'm going to share some slides in a minute. But before I do that, the reason it's not doodling, doodling is actually a part of it. So it's not it meditative sketching or meditative doodling, whatever you want to call it, is part of the practice. But what Sketch Poetic does is it actually invites you to go past the doodling and sit in the discomfort of what's coming up. And
Yeah.
really, there's two things that's happening. You surrender to the process. So, if depending on where you are in the journey as a creative, or even in your mental health journey or emotional journey. So you might consider yourself someone with a fairly low emotional IQ, or you might consider yourself someone with a really high emotional IQ. You may
Hmm.
also consider yourself a non artist, never know, you don't even know how to sketch a stick man, which is what I always hear, or you're a fine artist and have been doing art for a long time. No matter where you are, Sketch Poetic meets you where you are. And so basically, Sketch Poetic, what it does is it invites you to look at the marks that you're making and
Mhm.
actually invite what I call the unconscious and subconscious parts of yourself into
Yeah.
the mix. And there's also a spiritual aspect to it. And I'm just going to speak to this really briefly. Michael Singer wrote a book called The Surrender Experiment. And when I say you're
Great book.
surrendering, it's one of my favorite books. But he talks about this moment when you can rise above yourself and be witnessing what's happening. And that's what actually will happen as you sketch poetic is you will rise above yourself and you will see the marks you're making, you will hear the thoughts you're thinking and the narratives that are playing in your mind. And what will happen over time if you do this enough is compassion will arise and you'll start to basically release the judgment and criticisms that we end up showing up in our day-to-day lives. And I'm going to
Yeah.
show you more about the science behind all this in a minute.
It's amazing. Yeah, that makes so much sense. I
So
love
that's
the
it.
yeah, we read the Surrender Experiment as our first. We have a Four Sigmatic book club, and that was the
Oh,
first
you
book
did?
club book that we all read together. And so it's yeah,
Oh,
it gives a really good context of allowing compassion for ourselves, and then allowing things to flow through. And I think that kind of takes away. I'm nervous. Like even yesterday when we were talking, I'm like I don't know what's going to come out of the page, and I'm going to have to share it with everyone. And
yeah,
but just allowing it to almost like a meditation, right? Like being a
yeah.
detached and from the outcome or what it looks like, and just allowing like, okay, this is clearly something in me, so it's going to come out and be released. And that's really freeing in and of itself.
Yeah, you just said something that's really important about Sketch Poetic that makes it different than doodling. And somebody asked, it was Michael Singer, who was the
Mhm.
author of Surrender Experiment. But this is the most important part of in terms of why I call this emotional and mental health is I didn't, as I mentioned in my earlier story, I did not have a healthy relationship with emotions. I was always very expressive, friendly, I was outgoing, and people assumed I was very emotional. But the
Mhm.
reality is, and this is one of the things that I uncovered personally during the sketch poetic practice, is emotions actually have two components to it. There's the feeling of the emotion and there's the expressing of the emotion. I was really good at expressing emotions. I was just really bad at feeling them. And so I've had to share some examples just so people understand the difference. For example, I felt a lot of sadness and a lot of anger, but I never expressed it. I was always happy. Sheila is just the happiest person. She's just always on and just happy, happy, happy. But I was feeling all of that inside. So I didn't express it. And then you have the opposite. And I'm going to use road rage. It's a universal one. And you're driving and you get road rage and somebody cuts you off and you're pissed and you're like super angry and all that anger comes out.
Yeah.
Unconsciously and subconsciously, you're probably not angry at that driver. You're probably angry at something in your life. You hate your job. Your child's depressed from the pandemic. You know, your marriage is on the rocks. You're running out of money. And you don't want to feel that anger because that could open up a whole nother slew of emotions. So we push that down and we don't feel it, but it shows up in other ways. So we're expressing emotion. So that's the reason it's important. And what Sketch Poetic does is it invites you to feel and express both. And sketching helps me express it in a healthy way.
So incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's jump in. Why don't
Yeah.
you
So
share
let's
your
do
screen
it.
and like we'll dive deep.
All right. So I'm going to share with all of you what does it really mean to sketch poetic, and I'm just going to talk a little bit about more of the science behind it, and then we're going to do it together, which is freaking awesome. I'm so excited. Um, so there's three parts to sketch poetic, which I touched on a little bit, but I want to go a little bit deeper. So a lot of you are familiar with doodling. You know, you do it when you're in a work meeting or just on the side, and you do it in the margins of your life, and it definitely will happen. And so if for some reason you aren't ready to go deeper into this practice, that is okay. If you can just get into flow and meditate, that's fantastic. And that's really, really amazing. But the other things that are happening are in the other circles. So the reason Sketch Poetic changed my life is I actually was an artist when I was a child. I did have a gift. I just loved doing it. And I even majored in fine arts, as you said, Danielle, in my intro. But then I abandoned it after I got my art major. I went into corporate and I became an executive and like in a corporate career. And I basically abandoned my play and imagination side. Like, I don't know the last time I just played. I remember those 4 years of being an entrepreneur. I don't remember playing. I was just so in my work. And so what it does is it actually brings us back to our natural state. And one of my favorite lines is creativity is our birthright. There is no one person that's listening right now that isn't a creator. It is in our birthright, whether you're a musician, a gardener, culinary arts, creative expression, and that's what I call it, touches all of that. Writing, even engineers are creatively expressing in the way that they're thinking through how the systems are breaking down. And we also are creators in our lives by just living it. So there's the play and imagination, and then the awareness and release. That to me is where a lot of the deeper healing has happened for me. So what is happening is when you're in flow and meditation, we often stop there. We get into flow and it feels really damn good, right? You're like, ah, this feels so good. I'm relaxed. But if you can just push past the meditation and actually rise above it, which is what I was saying about the surrender experiment, is if you start to listen to the narratives, and the reason sketching was really cool for me, Danielle, is I have a monkey brain. I cannot stop thinking. And for me to force that, for me to say, shut that thought is so counter to who I am. It didn't seem aligned. And what I've done now is found a practice that allows me to think, and it's okay because those thoughts are always going to pass. The difference is I just think of it as like a current in a river, and I no longer judge myself or feel triggered by those thoughts. I just kind of let them pass. So the awareness and release is basically the area where you will find the most what I call transformation and healing, is when you can look at your sketches and not look at them in judgment and criticism, which we'll talk about. You will start to find your unconscious is constantly trying to bring things to the surface, and it'll show up in your sketches. And it is not uncommon, and that's actually part of the healing, to recall thoughts, emotion, memories, experiences from your subconscious and unconscious. And I'm just going to give you a real world example. So when I host my workshops, I did a one-on-one checkpoint with one of the sketchers. And she showed me her sketch and she had like an X at the very corner. And I said, what was that? And she said it was a turtle. And I didn't like the way it looked. So I crossed it out. And I'm like, okay, but why didn't you just let it show? She's, I just didn't like the way it looked. I said, next time I want you to feel uncomfortable with the way it looks, but also just allow it to be there. So the next time we checked in, Danielle, she said, oh my God, Sheila, you're not going to believe what happened. I was sketching and I kept on seeing this dress, and I just drew a dress. And I said, well, what did it mean? She goes, well, it was a dress my mother used to wear. and she passed away 5 years ago. And she goes, I couldn't stop crying. And I get chills every time I tell that story
I
because
just got
she had,
chills too.
yeah, because she had been told by so many people that it's been 5 years, you should get over it. And she had a really deep relationship with her mother. But if she hadn't sketched that image, if she hadn't allowed herself to reflect on what that image may mean, and not every sketch is going to have this, but every now and then it will. And you will feel that connection like, oh, I didn't realize I haven't finished grieving. Grief is a lifelong process. So she allowed herself to grieve and sketch through that. That is where the healing lies. I'm not going to go deep into this. There's tons of books around this, but I'm really into the neuroscience. So one of my favorite things about SketchPoetic that changed my life is not only was I not aware of mental health and emotions, but I did not know what breath work was, chakras, like mind body connection, all the things that I'm exposed to now because my life was all business all the time. Right. And so what ended up happening is I got really curious about what was happening within my body, within my head, and I just started to do research, and then I found there's a whole neuroscience behind all of this. There's a whole body connection to breath and just the trauma. So I told you I had a lot of trauma as a child. It was stored in my body. And so one of my other books that I want to recommend is How the Body Keeps Score. It's in the New York Times bestseller again, Bessel van der Kolk, and he talks a lot about how we store trauma in our bodies and we don't even know it, and it shows up. And so that's really what it's about. But it really comes down to bringing your sub and unconscious to the conscious field and then being intentional about basically looking at it. So there's two things I always say about sketching. It's you're giving it permission to be seen. And basically through the fact that you're giving it permission to be seen, it's sitting outside of you. So now it sits outside and now you're able to kind of let go of holding on to it. And then I've only got a couple more slides here and then I'll pause. But the choice of pen versus pencil, it's one of the number one questions I get. Sheila, can I draw with a pencil? The answer is no. If you are a professional artist, I know you want to do painting and pencil, but for the purpose of SketchPoetic, I'm inviting you just for at least the next 3 weeks, if not a week. I'm inviting you to do 21 days of daily sketching. The pen is purposeful, so I can only speak for myself. I am a perfectionist and a control freak. And I thought it had to do with making sure everything in my life was a certain way. But through my healing journey, I've realized the reason I'm a perfectionist, the reason I'm a peacemaker is I never felt safe. And I always created that safety. And it's all a perception externally, but inside, I never felt safe. So the reason the pen was so powerful is the metaphor and the idea that once you make a mark, you can't undo it. Once you make a mark, all the ugly things come up, the control, the judgment, the criticism, the perfectionism, oh, I want to throw this away, I don't want to look at it. But what's great is it's inviting you to feel those uncomfortable feelings in the space of art, because art is so freaking, it's like just such this warm blanket as a child that held us. And so it's finding this really beautiful, safe container to explore these, what I call the shadow dark sides of ourselves. And that is the beautiful duality of this practice. But here's the other part of the duality. The more you start to see your shadowed side and you start to see all these thoughts, these narratives in your head of I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, I suck as an artist, this feels really bad, and I hate my, all of these things. When you can start to see it and start to really allow yourself to sit there, the other stuff will show up, the trust, the acceptance, the surrender, and for me, the freedom. The great thing is I'm not asking you to swing from one to the other. This isn't a pendulum. This is the existence of both showing up at the same time. So it doesn't mean I'm no longer having control issues. It doesn't mean that perfectionism doesn't show up in my life from time to time. What it means is now I don't judge it when it does. So I have a lot of compassion for myself that I didn't have before. And then let's talk about the practice, but I want to pause there for a minute, Danielle, and then we're going to actually do the prompt together.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I loved what you said about just the things coming out and wanting to be seen. And we've, I'm sure all heard this in so many different ways, whether the story that was coming up for me was about a child that was having nightmares every night, and she'd see like the monster come out. And then as soon as the monster would come out, she'd like wake up, right, in a panic. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's the fear and the anticipation of what's going to happen. And there was, she was guided to say, just ask the monster, like, why he's there, and what
Yeah.
his name is. And after years of having these nightmares, one night, after giving that advice, she gathered up the courage, and she asked the monster, what his name was, and like what he was there and what message he had to bring. And the fear dissipated, right? It
Yeah.
was like that acknowledgement of being seen. And it's so accurate. I see it, through my clients as an herbalist and as a yoga teacher. It's like we just need to see and feel these things. And the fear around them is so much in the anticipation rather than in that thing itself. And
Oh,
so if we can be brave, right, and show up today on the page, but in whatever it is, and just know, like, okay, it's going to be, we just got to be seen. These things want to be seen and felt and had a place. And then we can kind of take a breath. They're no longer stuck in these crevices of our mind and our subconscious, and, stuck energy chakras or whatever practice you
all of that
follow.
stuff. All of that stuff. Bravo. Like I'm just like nodding my head. Hallelujah. Everything you're saying. There's one part of this though. There's one truth, and I'm going to call it a truth because it's my personal truth. When I started daily sketching and I realized why I was so afraid of turbulence, I want to share this nugget that helped me understand why this is so powerful.
Mm,
We all understand that when we remember something, memories are attached to it, right? The first time we had ice cream, the first, when your parents divorced, you remember all the emotions that are coming with it. But here's the thing: the opposite holds true. When you're feeling an emotion, memories are attached to it. So what was happening is every time I was on the plane and turbulence hit, I felt freaking terrified. And that terror was actually attached to every time I was traumatized as a child, and I felt that same terror. So what we do not know unconsciously is when we're feeling any emotion, it can be joy, it can be despair, it can also be lighter emotions. We actually have memories attached to emotions, and that's the thing that's really powerful, is when you can be conscious that our emotions are trying to tell us something. They're not good, they're not bad, they just are, and you can sketch through it. Like, seriously mind blowing. So that's the part that I wanted to share. So if you can remember, there's no such thing as good or bad emotions. They're here to serve us. What has to happen for us is we have to find a healthy way to express it. Sketching is mine. It could be cooking, it could be writing, it could be, dancing for you. I hope it's a gateway for you to explore all types of creative expression. But it is a powerful tool to do that. So I just wanted to share that because it
amazing.
really changed my life.
Cool. That's
So you
incredible.
guys ready to do it? Are you guys ready to try?
Oh, Sam's here. She's saying you're so inspiring, Sheila.
Oh, really? I can't see the chat comments. I would love to. I hope I can see them somehow. I would love to read
Yeah.
it. If there's any
There's
way to
a
record it.
there's a Maya Angelou quote being shared about creativity that says, the more you use, the more you have.
Oh, that's beautiful. Whoever
Okay.
shared that.
People are
If
like,
there's
I'm
a way
so
I can
ready.
save the comments, Danielle,
Uh-huh. Oh
in the
yeah, I
chat,
can
that would
do
be
that
great.
for sure.
So
Okay.
let's talk about, we're going to do it together, but I want to walk you through exactly how to do it, because
Okay.
it's not just, I'm going to go start sketching. So let's talk about it. Now I'm going to key you guys up. And this is what you're going to do every day. This is what's really freaking cool. It's super easy, super simple, but it's the intention behind it. Okay. So the very first thing we're going to do is honor the practice. I'm a huge advocate of reverence and ritualizing. So if you just saw this as I'm going to sketch, that's the energy you're putting into it. But if you saw this as a potential opportunity to transform and heal your life, you're going to provide an energy to it. So here's the ways to ritualize it. The good thing is ritualizing is simple. You can find a space in your home that you want to say, this is my sketch poetic area. You can get a coffee mug, and I do mine with coffee every morning. So that's a ritual. It could be a simple thing you do every day, like I'm going to just do my yoga and then do a schedule around it. So that's ritualizing it. But by creating a space and ritual, what you're saying to yourself is, I'm going to honor this. It matters to me. Now, when the pandemic hit, it really made this hard because part of the ritual for me was doing it at the same time every day. I understand now that we're kind of starting to come out of the pandemic, this might be easier, but during the workshops, I just asked to just create a ritual, but ideally you do it at the same time every day, morning or evening. I think the evenings have been great for me as well. Starting on time is what I was saying. The good news is you don't have to do 30 minutes a day. So my book that's coming out, I actually do 2 prompts. It's a 10-minute prompt and a 30-minute one. And the one we're doing today is 10 minutes. So that's all I'm asking from a time commitment, 10 minutes. And you can really unlock a lot in 10 minutes. And then the sketch on every page was just my thing. But really what it means is just commit to it daily. When I first started basically in the 20 years I've been in the corporate space, I had a stack of sketchbooks. Like I'd go into it, and when a sketch wasn't perfect, I'd kind of ignore it. And then I'd buy a whole brand new sketchbook. And basically, it was just a metaphor for my life. Basically, I didn't want to commit and I didn't want to go inward. I wasn't ready. So that's the one caveat I'm going to say to any of you. I wish I could see your lovely faces. Please, please, please do not beat yourself up if this doesn't stick, because you may not be ready for whatever reason. It may come back around 3 months from now, a year from now, and you may decide, I love this idea, but I want to do music or I want to do something else. I am not attached to sketching. What I am attached to, that I believe art heals and the creative process heals. Here's the 3 simple steps. Anyone can do it. You do not need to be an artist, but it really matters that you guys understand that this is the SketchPoetic practice. Sketching is not, and if you look at my hand, sketching is not from your wrist down. That's drawing. And let me explain that. I call it SketchPoetic because if you're an artist and you know that the history of art, masterpieces were created with sketches. You never really saw sketches. They were meant to be really quick renders, and then you would use it to either paint on top of it. And if you go to a lot of retrospectives of famous artists, that's the stuff people like to look at. It's like, how did they get to that freaking masterpiece? It's the sketches. So I chose to call it sketching for that reason, because it was a metaphor. I want you to create not for the purposes of how it's going to end or the outcome or what masterpiece you perceive it to be. It's not about that. I don't want you to ever wonder, is somebody going to look at this? Because you are the only person that matters. So you're an audience of one. So the first thing you're going to do in terms of actually doing it is you're going to do a body scan. And the way I visualize this, Danielle, is an X-ray machine that's going from the top of my head all the way to the tip of my toes. And I do it enough where I can do that in a minute or 2, but maybe when you first start, you may want to be more intentional and to go slower. But really the things that I want you to pay attention to are there any aches and pains in your bodies? Are you holding your breath? Are you a kind of person that tends to hold your breath? Pay attention to the internal organs. Are you finding yourself, there's different things. Your nervous system, are you on edge a lot? Have you not been getting any sleep? So that's really, and what I call it is like an audit. You're just auditing. There's nothing to do with this information other than just to catalog it. Okay, so I did it today, had a lower back pain. I didn't sleep well, so I was tired. And I had a little bit of a headache this morning. So when I sketched, I paid attention to that. The second is the awareness of emotions. Second question is, how am I feeling today? It's that simple of a question. 3 different responses you're going to get. You know how you're feeling. You do not know how you're feeling, or you're feeling a lot of different things at once. And that's okay. Same thing. You can write this down in your sketchbook if you want, or you don't. You just, nothing to do with it, audit. Now you're going to feel and express. So let me just share how to sketch poetic. Basically, I'm going to just use peace as an example. I feel peaceful today. I feel peaceful. I'm not asking you to sketch a dove or a peace sign. Those are symbols of peace. It's not how peace feels. So the way I want you to think about it, and I'm just going to give you a few hacks here, is basically think of yourself as a dancer, a musician, an anthropologist, if you get stuck with this idea that I'm not an artist, okay? So that's really all I want you to do is, if you think of a dancer, peace, how does a dancer move? How does a musician play peace? Think of your sketch, your pen, as a tool to express the feeling, not how it is perceived in terms of a symbol. And then that's it. That's sketch poetic. And so we're going to do a prompt together. I'm going to put the next slide up. We're going to take the leap, but I want to see if anyone has any questions before we do the leap together.
Yeah, and I wonder if we should guide people through that body scan.
Can you? Yeah, that would be great. Do you want to do that, or do you want me to do that?
Yeah, let's all maybe shake out anything and get comfy. Hopefully you all have a pen and paper, sketchbook in front of you. And before you grab it, let's just start coming into our breath. Breathing in through the nose, out through the mouth, in through the nose, Your next breath out, just gently closing your eyes if it feels safe and comfortable. And just allow your breath to be at its normal pace. And as you're breathing, just draw your awareness to the very top of your head. And just like this X-ray, without judgment or expectations, just beginning to scan. Continue to breathe as you maybe invite a sense of grounding, allowing thoughts swirling in your mind to just settle. Scanning down your neck and your shoulders, seeing if they might be able to drop just a little bit further down your back. Noticing how you feel. Scanning through your heart space and down your arms. Continue to breathe as we make our way around our torso and into our bellies. Just noticing. And just continuing. We'll scan down our thighs and around our knees. Checking in. Eventually you'll make your way down your calves and just pausing when you get to your feet. And then with this mindful breath, everything you just noticed, just continuing to be present. Take a big breath in through your nose. Maybe even releasing a sound as you exhale. One more breath like that. Big inhalation, filling up your body. And an audible exhale. Just from this quiet space, in your own time, beginning to bring your awareness back to the space, maybe the sounds, the smells around you. And just slowly, when you feel ready, you can flutter your eyes back open.
And then ask yourself, how do you feel? So I'm just going to share this slide as you get started, just so you have it as a point of reference, and then we're going to start the timer. Just some guiding principles. I'm going to talk like I'm a yoga instructor. Be uncomfortable. It's okay. That's where the healing lies. It's being uncomfortable in a safe space. It's not about perfection. There are no mistakes, even if it feels like one. It's all intentional. Trust the process because it's going to be uncomfortable. You're an audience of one, and be patient with yourself. I'm just going to hold this here for just a little bit, just as friendly reminder of what I mean by sketching the feeling. These are examples of people from previous workshops of what they did when I asked them to express their feelings. And it was sad, isolated, peaceful. And you can see it's not a symbol, even though some people try, are still attached to that. It's really the feeling. So that's what I want you to do. And that is it. So what we're going to do is I'm going to put a timer for 10 minutes. And I'm going to just have you leap into it. And part of the reason I want you to leap together is if this is your very first page in your sketchbook, I don't want you to have this attachment that the first sketch has to be perfect. This is your first sketch. So go for it. Take a leap and see how you feel. So let's do it. Let's go for it. So I'm going to put the timer on. Thank you, Danielle. Let's get started. So as you're sketching, I'm going to drop in from time to time. You should now be making your first marks, and your thoughts are going to be thinking through things. And it could be the most random stuff, or it could be related to how you're feeling. You'll notice I'm not playing any music. And the reason being is I want you to listen not only to your thoughts, but listen to the surroundings around you and use it as inspiration. Pay attention to the noises furthest away from you, even to those closest to you. Use it all as inspiration because it's really inviting you to be mindful in this moment and to sketch through what you go through. And whatever thoughts are coming up, do not judge them, invite it in. And remember, there's nothing happening on paper that's not happening in your life. So if you're judging it or you're criticizing it or you're feeling joy and ecstasy in it, it's happening in life. There's these pockets when we're doing that. So I'm going to pause there and just continue to sketch, and I'll drop in a few more minutes. If you're asking what emotion you're sketching, somebody asked that. It's the emotion you're feeling at this particular moment, which is why I'm dropping in right now. It is not uncommon when you first start to do this that the emotion you're feeling when you first go into it shifts during the sketching. So, for example, if you're excited and you start to sketch and emotions come up, maybe your emotions will shift, and vice versa. Maybe you were irritated when you first started sketching. And then by doing this, you started to get it more in a flow state and you got more relaxed. So, what I invite you to do is continue to allow your emotions to shift. And if you're one of those people that sketch really fast, and that's okay, start a new page. There's no rules around this. The only rules were the 3 steps I told you about. If you have any questions, do ask in the chat. I can see them. And yes, you can write words. I'm glad you asked that. I only do that for people that already have a writing practice. If you do not have a writing practice, I do invite you to just sketch because that's more than enough. But if you feel compelled, trust your intuition. So you're almost halfway through. You're already halfway through. It's been 5 minutes. And the question around, can we draw multiple things on the same page? Absolutely. There is no rule around what to sketch. If you want to sketch objects or marks and you want to take up the whole page, you want to do multiple pages, trust whatever your intuition is guiding you. And it's okay if you don't see images or anything. Basically, what you're doing is just making marks, and marks don't have to have meaning. Sometimes it's just good to let it out. Think of it as a purging of what's inside out. Like truly, you're dumping it on the page and you want to say goodbye to it. You want to say, here it is, it's out there. And if your emotions do change, you can stay on the same page. I highly recommend it. Sometimes it's the evolution of how the emotions shift that helps. And yes, Heidi asked a question around, can you sketch over lines? It's because your unconscious is asking you to do that. So if you're asking me the question, it's because your unconscious is playing. And so don't question it. It seems nonsensical, I know, but it's not. Just go with your gut. So we're at 2.5 minutes left. So as you're sketching, a couple of other thoughts I want you to really think about in terms of the depth of this practice. There are going to be times when you sketch that you may be tapping into something that isn't yours. And what I mean by that is perhaps you're an empath or an intuitive or somebody that is a caregiver. And sometimes the emotions you're feeling aren't yours. And so not every emotion you feel may be your emotion. Maybe you're carrying the weight of somebody else. And that's okay to let go of as well. So this practice is really inviting you to surrender and give yourself permission to see the emotions living outside of yourself. You do not need to hold it. And that's the reason why the body keeps score is so powerful, because if we can learn that a lot of the things we're feeling that we're holding on to and suppressing and pushing down are always present, we just aren't intentional or aware of it. That's the key. You think you're ignoring it, you think it's not there, but it's always present. So let's be intentional and let's be conscious of what's present in you. But I just wanted to share that because a lot of people think that every emotion they're feeling is theirs, and sometimes it's not, especially as a caregiver. Jennifer, I'm going to answer your question after the sketch prompt. All right, 1 minute left. You got 45 seconds. So just wind down, find a ease of stopping point. If your body feels like you want to continue, that's great. That's a good sign. If you've stopped halfway through and you just didn't stick, and so I'm going to talk about that in a minute. And Jennifer, I love your question. I cannot wait to answer it. All right, time is up. Find an easy resting point, and then I'm going to stop sharing. And then I just want to answer Danielle's question. Jennifer's question, and then Danielle, I'll let you moderate the group. Jennifer asked a really what I call a vulnerable question. And so I just want to say thank you, Jennifer. I'm really uncomfortable and it really doesn't fit me. Sketching, I don't know if it's sketching or if I'm resisting. I do not know that answer because it's so personal, but I will just share this with you. I've done hundreds of workshops, and I say hundreds, meaning I've done events as well. And I've also done workshops in the past. And I will tell you this, that there's always a natural resistance to trying anything new. So that's the first thing. The second thing is I caveated this earlier and I want to caveat it again. The reason I believe in the power of SketchPoetic is because I believe in the power of creative expression as a whole. And so what will happen, and let's just give you a data point. If there's 10 people doing this, about 2 people will drop out before they even start. No judgment. It just means it wasn't for them. And if that happens to be you, Jennifer, that's okay. But what I hope is that you took something away from today that's going to stick with you. And you may come back to it later. You might try dancing, you might try music. But my intuition says there may be some resistance because you said it, not me. So if you've already said that question, it's probably in the unconscious and you know you're resisting. The second thing that I will say to you is that there's probably the critic and the judge, whether that's coming from the artist side of you that doesn't think you're an artist, or you still think this is drawing. The fact that you called it drawing tells me that there may be an opportunity, an invitation for you to revisit that this isn't a drawing practice. This is you taking the stuff inside of you and sketching out of it. And so think of it as mark making. Don't think of it as your drawing. So that's my answer to you. It's so personal. I cannot tell you what's the answer for you, but I'm hoping that helps guide you. And I think that's it.
Yeah.
Oh, if you have basically no artistic ability, that's another big important question. There's 2 things to that. In my book, I actually provide some, like I call it Zentangle starting points. That's okay. So if you like look up on Google Zentangle, they're basically marks you can make to just get started, like a little catalyst. That's okay. Mark, if you're needing something to catalyze yourself to make marks, as long as you're using it as a catalyst and you're not just doodling. Does that make sense? So just if you need that, Google Zentangle or mark making, and then just use that as a starting point.
Amazing. That was so powerful. I was fully in it. with you all, just so everyone knows. I'm like, yeah.
Danielle, I
And
can't hear you.
can you hear me? That's weird.
Is it me? Oh, it was my my volume was down.
Can you hear me now?
No, it was my volume was down because I was trying to be all peaceful.
Yeah, that was just so powerful. And I was like, I looked up and there was all these chats and so much to relate to in the chat. So when you share what you're feeling, you're going through, just know that there's, a couple hundred of us here today that are doing this together. And that helps your vulnerability to be like, yeah, I'm not alone. My emotions definitely change. So whoever asked that, thank you, Bex, and I was like, okay, I'm going to keep going with it. And my lines got like darker and, yeah, so interesting.
I'm going to give a hack, by the
Yeah.
way. This is Danielle. This is important because I can see Mark and a few others. There's a few of you that were just literally frozen on the
Mm,
page. I know
yeah.
who you are besides I've seen it. And I know, not literally know who you are. So what basically is happening is there's an unconscious fear of whatever it is that's on the blank page. And so here's what I hack for you if you really, really want to try it and you're just stuck. It's a simple hack. You're going to get a pen and you're just going to do this. Look at my hand. You're just going to, I call it hash marks. And you're just going to hash on the page. But here's what's going to happen. You're going to fill the page with hash marks. But here's what, when you remember as a kid, you looked at clouds and you saw images,
Mhm.
you're going to love this hack because basically all you're going to do is hash until you start to see, you're going to start seeing things in it. I promise you. I don't care who you are. I've never not done this with someone and they haven't seen something in it. That's the invitation. It had nothing to do with what you were doing on the page. It's the stuff coming up when you see something in it. And so it's like the Rorschach test, right? So for those of you that have said, I don't know how to draw, I don't know how to sketch, I'm resisting this, promise me you'll try what I just asked. 10 minutes. You're just going to draw blades of grass, just blades of grass, and play with the weight of your hand. Play with the heaviness of the hand, play with the lightness of it. So play with the weight of how you're pressing on the paper
Hmm.
and just look what basically you're staring at these lines and something will come up. That is the practice. You basically do that for 10 days. There will be stuff that comes up, I promise you. So hopefully that helps. That's one of my favorite hacks for people that are so resistant to it.
Yeah, that's amazing. Um, there's a lot of adorable
Sure.
things in the chat about how many people drew mushrooms or coffee. I definitely drew mycelium networks. I don't know. I was feeling really connected to you all.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of just sharing of like, wow, I can't believe the realizations I had in 10 minutes. And a lot of emotions coming up for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah,
Not
drawing,
uncommon.
visual representations. People feel a lot safer, which is so beautiful from that guidance, Sheila.
Love that.
And yeah, I think the blades of grass, yeah. Really freeing, being able to shift and release emotions without having to stick to the structure of writing. Yeah, I feel that big time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do we want to take a few questions?
Yeah. Is there any more questions? I would love to.
Yeah, feel free to ask any other questions you have in the chat. Just thank you all for doing this with us. And oh yeah, there's someone asking if you recommend certain pens or certain materials.
Yes, I love that question. And I'm going to show something that's in my book that I probably share with this group if you get in the email list. So I'll promise to give this to you. So let me answer the supply question. I'm a believer that this is a metaphor. So as long as if you can get higher end supplies, like I use Micron pens, Sakura pens, but don't hold it precious. I started with a ballpoint pen, guys. I started with a pen that I got at the office because I didn't understand the gravity of what was happening. And so part of the benefit of what I'm hoping for is for you to understand that the innocence and the purity in which I entered this practice is the innocence and purity I'm inviting you to join. Don't go into it thinking you're going to have these huge transformative experiences because if you go in there, you're already putting pressure on yourself. Just start sketching. And so one of the things I said to Danielle yesterday that changed me is I always envisioned, because I worked in corporate, and transformation is always this promise of this bigger thing. You know what transformation means to me? I just came home to myself. This is the Sheila that's probably been here my entire life. I just didn't let her exist because I couldn't be still.
Yep.
Stillness was my enemy. Silence was my enemy. And for the first time, I actually feel still through sketching. I'm going to share this thing that's going to be in my book, but I wanted to give you a preview, and I'll just actually share it with with our community right now. But
Yeah.
basically, when I mentioned the Zentangle, I actually provide a visual library in my book, and it's basically starting points. Oh shoot, can you see it? Oh,
Yeah, we saw it and then we lost it.
oh shoot. Oh, you know what? It closed. That's why. It might be an issue with my
Such a
phone.
tease. We can
Yeah, I'll
share
send
it
it.
maybe in the follow-up email.
Yeah, I'll send it. Because
Amazing.
it's let me just try it one more time, and if it for some reason it crashes again,
Yeah, of
it looks like
course.
this. Oh, it's because I continue. I see. Yeah, I can't share it, but basically it's marks. But what I want to do when I send it to you, it's basically it's starting points for marks is
Beautiful.
is to still want you to do the 3 steps: body scan, what emotions am I feeling, then look at the visual library and see which marks are connecting with you. So maybe
Amazing.
spirals, you're liking the spirals for whatever reason. Maybe it's the hashes. So I'm going to provide all that to you.
Amazing. So I want to honor everyone's time. I think we'll stay, if Sheila, it's okay with you, for maybe like another few
I'm
minutes and answer
more than
some questions. But if
yeah.
those of you have to run, just like so much gratitude for showing up, for being vulnerable, for trying something new. We'll send you an email tomorrow, and I'll include ways to keep in touch with Sheila. You can follow her at SketchPoetic on social. And again, our little thank you discount code is just SketchPoetic. It's really simple. So use that next time you're stocking up on adaptogens. I was drinking lion's mane and golden latte while we were doing this, and prepare, as we say with Sigmatic, it's full body holistic wellness, right? So nourish yourself inside to allow things to come out, right? To feel that safety and to
Yeah.
feel that sense of ease, to support your stress response so you can show up fully to the page, or show up fully to your kids, or whatever task is at hand. So um, thank you, thank you, thank you. And if you can stay, we'll
Please
answer some
do.
of these questions are incredible.
Yeah, I'd
Um,
love to I would love for people to stay, and if they can, because I think the questions are what is important, because
yeah,
it's the leap that matters. The moment you can take the leap, but there's things that are resisting the leap. So I want to answer those.
amazing. Yeah. So the first question is, how do you close out the practice to solidify the healing? Are there other steps after the sketching? Do you analyze the sketches?
Excellent question. The answer is I was naturally an analytical person anyway. So that was my natural state. So whenever I sketched, I would look at them and wonder what came up. But what I am going to say to answer your question is you're not really analyzing it. What is happening is your thoughts are already connecting to the sketch. So what you're going to do is just be aware. So instead of using the word analyze, what it is it's a mindfulness practice. What you don't realize is there's thoughts coming up all the time, and you may not be aware of the intention behind it. So instead of thinking of it as analyzing, so after I'm done with a sketch, I close my sketchbook and I'm like, oh, that was interesting. This came up. And I
Hmm.
swear to God, that's always my sentence. Well, that was interesting. That came up, or that was interesting. My emotions shifted, or that's interesting. I don't know how I feel right now.
Yeah.
And that's truly, it's curiosity more than anything. So be curious. But I will tell you this, this is a really great question. If you're so focused on mining and growing and healing, and you're so growth oriented, you're actually missing the point, because the process is the healing. There's nothing else to do. If all you did is sketch and become aware of it in the process, and you close your sketchbook, you do it the next day and you don't do anything else, you might be surprised what was happening. There's nothing to do. You're just doing it. I know, and that's the uncomfortable part. Listen, I have been a growth oriented person my entire life. I'm Asian. Like, the Asian culture is this is what you do, and you get there and you're at the end point of the goal. But nobody told me that I'd get to the end point of the goal and never questioned why I even wanted it. So
Yeah.
every day you're getting an invitation to actually question why you're feeling what you're feeling and asking. So that's it. It's the invitation to be more mindful. That's truly it. And it just happened to be sketching for me.
Amazing. Amazing. Um, the next question is, how can we incorporate this into our everyday routine? Should we do it if we're feeling stressed, or the same time every day?
No, I love that. So when one of the things intuitively that came up, Danielle, when you did this beautiful guiding meditation, is we don't always have that luxury. Your kids are screaming at you, you're heading to the airport, all different types of things. And some of the best sketches where I got a lot of out of it is when I was irritated, when I was stressed out, and I just needed to release it. So I have to share this part because anger was the emotion I pushed down the most. I had a lot of anger for a lot of different reasons and towards a lot of different people I loved. And my biggest fear was I couldn't show my anger because I didn't want to make that person feel bad. Right. Well, what happens now is I get angry at someone, whether it's my husband, my child, my coworker, and I just release it. I'm like, I'm so effing pissed right now, and I will do it. So I actually do it all the time. I use it as a release. And it's because when I was growing up, I saw anger as a negative emotion. Remember, I talked about that. And so
Mhm.
it's one of the reasons I avoided anger because I never saw it. I never saw a healthy way of it being expressed. I only saw negative expressions of anger. But
Yep.
through sketching, if you have followed me on my journey, a lot of my sketches have come from anger.
Yep. Amazing. Um, this last question, I seem to want to write words more than to draw short,
Yeah.
simple words.
Yep.
I did sketch a little, but what could that mean?
It means that's your creative expression choice.
Mm, yeah.
Yeah. Honestly, my big excitement, and you see it in my face, I cannot wait to introduce Sketch Poetic to the world because I know I'm going to be opening the doors to all the people I've met in my life that are incredible. They do writing prompts and dance prompts. There are millions of people doing what I'm doing right now. They're using different methods. And I just fundamentally believe we're going through a new renaissance in terms of seeing art and creativity in a new way and tying mental health to it. So this is why it matters is mental health doesn't have to be this heavy weighted thing. It can be fun and playful, and that's the rub and that's the tension. Nobody would have thought I can explore these dark shadowed sides of myself while I'm playing, and
Yep.
that's why it's so healing.
It makes it so much more accessible. Like,
Yeah,
oh,
it does. And it's affordable. I'm glad you said that word. There's so many underserved communities that can't afford therapy.
yeah.
But art's here. It's right here. Dancing's here. Music. So write. If you're a writer and it's coming up for you, write. Don't sketch.
Yeah.
Write. Yeah.
I love that. Um, one more question. Do you ever continue working on a sketch from a previous day or do you always start a new one?
One of my favorite questions because these are the types of questions I told you, Danielle, that will come up about rules.
Yeah.
There was no rule.
Hmm.
If you are being guided to add to a sketch, do it. The only thing I ask is, are you doing it to add to make it look better?
Hmm.
Or are you doing it because something about it feels unresolved? See the difference. Unresolved is a feeling. Adding to it to make it look good is about drawing.
Yeah.
You got to just check yourself. And by the way, I just wanted to have this like moment of full transparency. When I built my Instagram account, I did it to just hold myself accountable. And there was a period of time, I think about a year in, when my following started to grow, that I noticed I started sketching with the audience in mind, and I had to stop. Like I had to literally get off my Instagram for about a week and remember why I was doing it. So when you start to check yourself and realize I'm adding to this to make it look good, that's the only check I ask. But if you want to do on 10 pages, you want to add to another page, you want to tear it up, do whatever you want, trust your intuition, but check yourself on the why you're doing it.
Amazing. That makes so much sense. Oh, there's so many beautiful comments. I want to read every single one of these, but I'm going to save the chat so that you can go through and read them all,
Thank you.
Sheila.
Thank you.
And yeah,
And I
I just
invite
want
all of you. I think somebody asked if there's going to be a YouTube channel. Yes, you can, and reach out to me. You can reach out to me through Instagram, through email, as Danielle already said. Obviously, you just give me time, depending on how many emails I get. But my hope is that I can support your journey as you go.
yeah. Thanks, Sheila. Thanks for supporting all of us and holding this space. And yeah, just the most beautiful shares. People are like, I have ADHD. I've never been able to quiet my mind, and this helped in such a great way.
Oh,
Yeah, you're
that's a good one. I thought I had ADHD. Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, the process is the healing. Such a profound practice, Sheila. Thank you. Love the shrooms. The session was amazing. This is igniting. Yeah, really appreciate the introduction to this healing. So it's just so much gratitude. Makes me cry. You have the best for Sigmatic community ever. Sheila, thank you so much. And we'll be in touch. We'll share an email with all of you tomorrow with info for getting in touch with Sheila. And I hope you all have a beautiful rest of your day or night.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Sheila.
You're welcome.